when that call for action went out, 121 tribal nations, sovereign nations from Canada, First Nations, as well as tribal and native nations on the state side in the US, sent representatives with their flags. If you go there now, there's a boulevard of flags of native tribal nations flying. That's the real United Nations there. So I was ready. In fact, I appreciate Sierra Club for this award and everything you've done to get me here. In fact, the original ticket flew me out of Bemidji, Minnesota. That's where I live, outside of the community, in a small community, not even a community, a couple homes, called Debs, Minnesota. Anyone know where Debs, Minnesota is? Named after Eugene Debs. So that's where I live, right south of the Red Lake, Ojibwe, Anishinaabe territories. And so my flight came out of there. I was hoping that I would leave Standing Rock, the Sacred Stone Camp, in time to catch my flight. But that didn't happen. And I called the staff, and they really helped, and they changed my ticket. So I only packed a few clothes that I needed to be on the ground. So I came smelling like smoke. I've been out there camping out, getting muddy when it rained. And so I caught a flight out of Bismarck, North Dakota, to be here. And yeah, so I had to buy a shirt today. Yeah, over Eddie Bauer in San Francisco. Al Jazeera got a hold of me today, and they needed to do a live stream in a studio they paid for in San Francisco to talk about the Sacred Stone Camp, to talk about the Dakota Access Pipeline. And a few positive words, great words to say. But first, when people were asking me, where are you going? How come you're leaving the camp? You're leaving us. And I said, well, I'm going to go accept an award, the John Muir Award. And they said, who? And I said, I asked that question, who is this white man? Yeah, and we want them parks back. But just to say a few words, I appreciate the preparation to say a few of the things that I've been involved with. And I'm the eyes and ears of not hundreds but thousands of people that I have met on this journey of Indigenous resistance, this journey of working with Indigenous communities to give language of decolonization, of not only our mindset, but also engaging in coalitions and alliances for non-Indigenous peoples also to decolonize. Because we all are products of an industrialized society. A society that has systematically been removed from nature. And that's why I recognize this man that's behind the name behind this award. Because he must have recognized something that we treasure, the beauty of nature, the beauty of the wild. And in this path, we follow prophecy. Prophecy is within the cosmovision of who we are as Indigenous peoples, not only in the North, but in the South. And that's how we solidify who we are as Indigenous peoples of the world, because we have something in common. And that's that very profound spiritual relationship with the creative female principle, part of the creation natural laws, and our relationship with Mother Earth, Unchimaka, Grandmother Earth. But also recognizing that balance with Father Sky. And these are ingrained into who we are. But like I have been instructed by the elders, and many of them have gone on, Corbin Harney from the New Ways of Gabia, Nevada, Western Shoshone, a holy man, one of those people that guided me on my journey. James Maine from Montana, from Fort Belknap, as we joined him as he was fighting Landusky Mine, gold mine, that completely took the cap off one of their sacred mountains. People like that, I remember them. Louise Benali, her grandparents, Roberta Blackgoat from Navajo, my mother's Dene. My other side is Dakota. Roberta Blackgoat went to the United Nations in the 70s in defense of the sacredness of our Dene tribe, our Navajo lands. And when she testified in front of the world leaders, she took that podium, she said, "I'm here to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves." And that was the earth, the animals, the insects, the birds. That's a responsibility that we have. So I've been talking about that, but the need for the world, humanity, all Americans, because we do come from the belly of the beast, that we have to all reevaluate our relationship to the sacredness of Mother Earth. Mother Earth is not a commodity. Mother Earth should not be an object. Mother Earth should not be, as one of those economists said one time, as if she's in liquidation. But that's what we're dealing with in North Dakota. That's what we're dealing with within the lands and territories of the Hunkpapa Lakota, the Hanktawane, the Dakota Cannonball, which is one of the communities, where Dakota Access Pipeline LLC, based out of Texas, with Energy Partner LLC, are building this 1,172-mile pipeline, 32-inch pipeline. That's going to transport frack oil. One of my staff, Candy Mossette, some of you may have heard her speak many times, comes before Bertha, the three affiliated tribes, Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara. She's there holding the ground. She speaks out. She speaks out about the man camps that have come with hydrofracking in her community, her reservation in North Dakota. Sexual abuse, domestic abuse has skyrocketed. Man camps. So there is a violence, there's a male violence, not only against our woman and your woman, but violence against Mother Earth. Objectification of Mother Earth on such a scale that most people in humanity, the world, don't realize the separation that has taken place, and how we're dealing with property right regimes that look at everything as property right, to where our work and our campaign to stop the Trans-Canada Keystone XL pipeline and the transport of this crude, highly corrosive, chemical, toxic, new type of crude oil coming from the tar sands is at the expense of the Cree and the Dene people and the Métis. And that the First Nations in the north and that territories have to fight for legal standing when the corporations have more standing than they do. So that's what we're trying to change as a world. And strategically looking at the legal regimes, recognize the rights of the clean water, Missouri River, the rights of the water to be clean, the right of the ecosystem to be clean, the rights in earth jurisprudence, the rights of Mother Earth, to have standing. That's where we have to come together. And we have to look at those mitigation plans coming out of the world leaders coming together like in the UN or even in the United States. We have to cut the combustion and release of fossil fuels at source. We are in an extreme time. We are in an extreme time. We have to make that transition sooner than later. We know that. So we have to look at what those solutions are that are coming out of the Beltway of Washington, D.C. and Parliament in Ottawa. We have to look at what's coming out of the Paris Agreement and what we have framed as Indigenous Environmental Network, standing in solidarity with many Indigenous peoples worldwide, and now a growing movement, a global movement of climate justice. We educated the communities, the grassroots people of Europe before Paris, groups like Alternativas and many others, for real solutions, not false solutions. And yes, we did take on the issues around carbon trading, carbon offset. Because as we took that home to our spiritual leaders decades ago, they asked us to explain what that is. So we had to explain it from a trading perspective, where they treat air, carbon, methane, and these, you have to treat it, you have to define it as a commodity to bring it into a trading regime. It involves privatization of air. Privatization of air. So our spiritual leaders said, no, we cannot do that. We cannot involve in something like that. It's not good, it's evil, they said. We have to stay away from that. The commodification, privatization of our air, and now the privatization of trees. Chevron buying carbon credits in Ecuador, the social bosque. And now many of those indigenous peoples and those other mestizos and non-indigenous peoples who are dependent on the forest for their livelihood now do not have access to many of those areas. You can Google search this, human rights complaints. So those are one of the areas that as indigenous peoples we are very principled in who we are. We are also an endangered species. That's why it's very important as we go out on the front lines, and as in Paris, our delegation, with a lot of your support at Sierra Club too, and other organizations and people allowed us to bring 51 indigenous peoples to Paris from the United States and Canada. We brought 16 indigenous peoples from the Puget Sound that went out on the Puget Sound with many support of the chapters, your chapter, and other groups to fight against shale oil going into Alaska, the Lummi, the Tidela, the Swinomish. They went with us, the young people who were the paddlers on a canoe journey in the Sin River. One of the canals. They didn't allow us on the Sin River. And then I stood with the Siriaku. So that's our journey, and many, many more. Many other journeys that we've had. And as I stand here, I remember those that have gone on in our movement, the Indigenous Environmental Network, our movement, to lift up our voice as people in the front line. In Paris, our indigenous people, North and South, said we are the red line. We are the red line. The Grassroots for Global Justice Alliance and the Climate Justice Alliance for people of color, low-income people, and workers coming together, breaking out of those silos that have been established for us as a big movement, recognizing economic justice, climate justice, energy justice, building a just transition plan. And I guess that's what they asked me to share with you in our quest to build alliances and coalitions. Is very much needed, very much needed. Because there's too much separation. We have to confront racism all the time. Racism is very strong in North Dakota. For those of you in North Dakota, you probably know that. There's still people that are silent who support the Bundys. They don't support the Lakota people there. They don't support the Mandan, Hidatsa, or Likara, or our Dakota people at Spirit Lake. No, there's racism there. So the criminalization, we have a fear of the same things that have led to the assassination of our sister in Honduras. We're afraid that the way of escalation of the law enforcement in North Dakota and the way that the media spin, showing people in the world that we're there in violence when we're not, that we have pipe bombs. We don't have pipe bombs. The women and the grannies and the children and the men and the elders all standing together in love and compassion in prayer. It's a spiritual camp with values and virtues. We have non-native people there as allies. And they have those dogs from that private security firm. Those dogs cut loose on our women. One of the women has a scar right now. It hasn't healed yet. It bit her right here. And she said, but I don't have no anger. I'm going to pray for that sheriff who let that security guard who did that. There's a lot of fear in our children up there, but they're strong in their resilience to stand strong. Something very unusual happened. In a good way, something very unusual happened. Even though, as a result of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe filing a lawsuit, they joined partnership with Earth Justice to file that lawsuit to challenge the permit that the Army Corps of Engineers gave to the Dakota Access Pipeline to drill under the Missouri River. Even though the tribe had many concerns and there was lack of consultation, because our people are not mere stakeholders. We are the original brothers and sisters of this North America, Turtle Island. There's nothing you can do about that. We are your older brothers and older sisters. I humble myself when I go to Europe, when I go to Africa, when I go to Asia. I am always the younger brother. So when this judge denied the lawsuit for an injunction, that's all the tribe wanted, was a temporary injunction so that their concerns can be heard. That they can be heard on the concerns of environmental protection, provisions of the National Environmental Protection Act, a full-blown EIS, concerns about not if that pipeline is going to leak, it's about when, and what are the plans for mitigation and cleanup when they still have problems with cleaning up the spill in the Kalamazoo. It's not just the Lakota people there. They're representing all people downstream as well, millions of people, native and non-native. And that's what the message is, they said. We are there in peace and prayer. We are recognizing that profound spiritual relationship we have with Mother Earth. But the other very important issue is the sacred site, our sacred sites. This is a sacred site. It's not folklore. It's a living entity. Water is a living entity. Water has spirit. So the tribe cautiously released the press release telling the world and the corporation that in that pathway, in that corridor of the Dakota Access Pipeline going to the river, is a very, very, very sacred area there. Rock joins on the rock, and there's burial sites there, not just one, but numerous. And they wanted to have that recognized so that the construction would be halted. And then next day, the company went and moved their equipment from one distance about 8 miles away. They moved it to that one spot. And that's when some of the people in the camp, they heard the construction going on. You can hear the heavy equipment. And they ran up there